What if the biggest change in your life will not come from luck, money, or opportunity, but from a single, quiet decision you make today? Not a dramatic one, not a loud one, just a moment where you look at your life honestly and whisper to yourself, "This cannot be how my story ends." Because if you observe human lives the way a patient naturalist observes the living world, you notice something fascinating. Entire lifetimes, careers, relationships, health, happiness can pivot from one simple moment of awareness, a moment where someone finally sees their life clearly and realizes something has to change. The real mystery is not how change happens. The real mystery is why most people never allow it to begin. You see, I have spent a lifetime observing patterns in forests, in oceans, in the quiet rhythms of the natural world. And when you watch long enough, patiently enough, something beautiful reveals itself. Change rarely begins with noise. It begins quietly, almost invisibly. A small shift here, a subtle adjustment there, a seed pressing upward through soil that for years seemed solid and unbreakable. Human lives follow the same gentle law of transformation. Most people believe their lives will change someday. Someday they will start the business. Someday they will take care of their health. Someday they will finally pursue the life they secretly imagine when they are alone with their thoughts. But if we observe closely, something curious becomes clear. That magical day called someday almost never arrives. Years pass. Habits repeat themselves. Days blur into months, months blur into years, and one morning a person wakes up and realizes their life looks almost identical to the one they lived 10 years ago. But then something unusual happens to a small number of people. One quiet day, sometimes without warning, they pause. They look around at their life with unusual honesty, and a simple thought forms in their mind. If nothing changes, this will be my future. And in that moment, something shifts. Life changes on one specific day, the day you decide it must. Now, this idea may sound simple at first, perhaps even obvious, but it is one of the most misunderstood truths about personal transformation. Because most advice about changing your life focuses on motivation. People tell you to wake up earlier, work harder, stay disciplined, push yourself beyond your limits. And while those ideas may have some value, they miss the deeper truth entirely. Lives rarely change because someone suddenly feels motivated. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings drift in and out of our lives like passing weather. Some days the sun shines brightly and everything feels possible. Other days the clouds arrive and even the smallest task feels heavy. Real change begins somewhere deeper than motivation. It begins with honesty. A quiet moment where you look at the path you are on and ask yourself a question that many people avoid for years. Is this the direction I truly want my life to go? To understand this more clearly, imagine standing beside a river. If you visit that river for a day, it seems constant, reliable. The water moves along the same path it always has, following the shape of the land as if it has no choice but to continue in that direction forever. If you return a year later, it still appears mostly the same. The same bends in the water, the same quiet current moving between the banks. But if you could observe that river for decades, something remarkable would slowly reveal itself. Tiny grains of soil begin to shift. Small stones roll gently beneath the current. The water presses patiently against the land, day after day after day. Then, one year, perhaps after a heavy rainfall, the river spills slightly beyond its usual path. It pushes through a softer patch of earth. At first, the change is so small that almost no one notices. But the next rainfall follows that new path, and the next, until one day the river has carved an entirely new course through the landscape. What once seemed permanent quietly changed direction. Human lives behave in much the same way. For years, we follow familiar patterns. We wake up at the same time, think the same thoughts, carry the same doubts, repeat the same habits. From the outside, everything appears stable. But beneath the surface, small questions begin to gather like rain clouds. Is this really the life I want? Am I becoming the person I hoped to be? What might happen if I tried something different? These questions often arrive late at night when the world is quiet, or during a long walk when the mind finally has space to breathe. Sometimes they appear while watching someone else live the kind of life you secretly wished you had the courage to pursue. And for a long time, many people ignore these questions. Not because they are foolish, not because they lack ambition, but because the human mind is designed in a very particular way. Our brains are not primarily designed to seek happiness. They're designed to avoid danger. For thousands of years, our ancestors survived by staying close to what was familiar. Familiar places, familiar routines, familiar tribes. Uncertainty often meant risk, and risk could mean death. So the brain developed a powerful instinct that still shapes our lives today. Stay with what is known. Even if what is known is not particularly joyful. Even if what is known quietly drains your energy. Even if what is known prevents you from becoming who you were meant to be. Familiarity feels safe, and safety feels comfortable. This is why people remain in jobs that do not inspire them. It's why people continue habits that slowly weaken their health. It's why so many lives follow the same narrow path year after year. But occasionally, something remarkable happens. A person begins to realize that staying the same is also a risk. In fact, staying the same may be the greatest risk of all. Because time continues moving forward whether we change or not. Every year that passes quietly shapes the person we are becoming. Every habit repeated today becomes a stronger part of tomorrow. And slowly a realization grows stronger in the mind. If I continue living exactly like this, where will I be in 10 years? 20 years? 30 years? This realization can feel uncomfortable at first, but it's incredibly powerful. Because once you see the direction of your current path, you gain the ability to choose a different one. Imagine for a moment meeting a version of yourself 20 years in the future. They walk into the room calmly. Their presence feels steady and peaceful. There's a quiet confidence in the way they carry themselves. You recognize them immediately. They are you, only older. Naturally, you ask the most important question. How did you become this person? Perhaps you expect them to talk about luck, or opportunity, or some sudden moment where everything changed overnight. But instead, they smile and say something surprisingly simple. Everything changed the day you stopped negotiating with the life that was making you unhappy. Just one decision. Not to tolerate certain patterns anymore. Not to keep repeating the same habits that quietly held you back. Not to postpone the life you secretly hoped to live. You see, transformation does not begin with motivation. Transformation begins with identity. The moment you stop asking, "What should I do with my life?" and begin asking a deeper question, "Who do I want to become?" This question changes everything, because when identity shifts, behavior follows naturally. If you decide you are becoming someone who values health, exercise is no longer punishment. It becomes an expression of who you are. If you decide you are becoming someone who grows intellectually, reading and learning no longer feel like chores. They become part of your natural rhythm. Identity quietly guides action, and action, repeated over time, shapes destiny. But there is another myth about change that deserves gentle examination. Many people imagine that transforming their life requires massive, dramatic action, quitting everything overnight, reinventing themselves instantly, turning their entire world upside down. But nature rarely works this way. In the natural world, enormous transformations often begin with very small beginnings. A seed smaller than a coin grows into a towering tree. A tiny coral organism slowly builds a reef large enough to be seen from space. A single drop of water, repeated over centuries, carves deep valleys through solid rock. Human lives change in exactly the same manner. Not through one giant leap, but through small decisions repeated with quiet consistency. Reading 10 pages instead of none. Walking for 20 minutes instead of sitting all evening. Practicing a skill for half an hour each day. Choosing curiosity instead of fear. Choosing patience instead of giving up. Individually, these choices may appear insignificant, but over months and years, they gently redirect the trajectory of a life. Think again of the river. It does not carve a canyon in a single afternoon, but given enough time, enough persistence, it reshapes the land itself. There is also a powerful moment that often appears at the beginning of real change. And interestingly, it does not begin with excitement. It begins with refusal. A calm refusal. A refusal to continue accepting a life that no longer feels aligned with who you are becoming. A refusal to allow fear to dictate your direction. A refusal to let another decade pass in quiet dissatisfaction. Refusal creates space, and inside that space, something extraordinary begins to grow. A new identity, a new direction, a story waiting patiently to unfold. So the question becomes very simple. If change begins with a decision, what decision might you make today? Perhaps the first step is simply honesty. Ask yourself a quiet question tonight. What part of my life already feels finished? Not broken, not hopeless, simply finished. Perhaps a habit that once served you but now holds you back. Perhaps a belief about yourself that is no longer true. Perhaps a routine that no longer reflects the person you wish to become. Clarity begins the moment we acknowledge what has quietly run its course. The second step is surprisingly gentle. Choose one small action that represents the person you wish to become. Not 10 actions, just one. If you want to become healthier, perhaps it is a daily walk beneath the open sky. If you want to become wiser, perhaps it is reading a few pages every evening before sleep. If you want to build something meaningful, perhaps it is dedicating 30 minutes each day to learning or creating. Small actions carry extraordinary power when repeated consistently. The third step is to imagine your future self again, the person you could become 10 or 20 years from now if you continue making choices aligned with your highest values. When you face decisions during the day, pause and ask yourself a simple question. Would my future self thank me for this decision? If the answer is yes, you are moving in the right direction. And finally, remember this. The decision to change your life is not made once. It is renewed daily. Every morning presents a small opportunity to continue the path you have chosen. Every evening offers a moment to reflect and adjust. And slowly, almost invisibly, the landscape of your life begins to change. There is a beautiful truth about human transformation that many people overlook. It rarely arrives with fireworks or applause. More often, it begins with a quiet realization. A moment where someone looks at their life honestly and decides something very simple. This story is not finished yet. The day you decide to change your life is not the day everything suddenly becomes easy. Challenges will still exist. Doubts may still appear from time to time. But something essential will have shifted. You will no longer be drifting through your days. You will be directing them. And that difference, though subtle at first, changes everything. So remember this simple thought. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are not missing some secret quality that other people possess. You are simply standing at the same quiet crossroads every human being eventually encounters, the moment they choose whether to continue the familiar path or begin carving a new one. And directions over time become destinies. If these reflections resonated with you, I would genuinely love to hear your thoughts. What decision do you feel ready to make today? Sometimes sharing that intention with others is the first real step towards making it real. And if you enjoy exploring ideas about human nature, growth, and the quiet forces that shape our lives, consider subscribing and continuing this journey with me. Because the most fascinating transformation we can ever witness may not be in distant forests or deep oceans. It may be the one quietly beginning inside you right now.